It was supposed to be a measured, dignified interview. CNN had spent weeks negotiating with Prince Harry's representatives for what they called a candid yet respectful conversation. The cameras rolled in the bright, glass-walled studio, the skyline of Los Angeles gleaming behind them. Jake Tapper, polished and calm, sat across from Harry, who wore a simple navy suit, his expression open but guarded. The first few questions were easy, about his charity work, veterans' mental health, and life as a father. But as Jake leaned forward, papers in hand, the tone shifted. "Let's talk about accountability," he said, his voice even. "You've spoken a lot about the media invading your privacy. But what about the times you've used that same media to promote your story?" Harry froze for a second, caught off guard. "Promote my story?" he repeated. Jake nodded slowly. "Yes. You've criticized the press, yet you've written a memoir, done interviews, even a Netflix series. Isn't that participating in the same system you condemn?" The studio air thickened. Harry's jaw clenched as he gave a polite, strained smile. "There's a difference between telling your truth and selling gossip," he said. Jake didn't flinch. "But isn't truth subjective when profit's involved?" The audience behind the glass walls stirred slightly, sensing tension. The interview had just turned from polite to personal. Harry leaned forward now, his voice firm. "I'm not here to justify how I tell my story. I spent years being silenced, misrepresented. I have every right to speak." Jake crossed his arms. "And yet," he said, "many people feel your narrative has shifted depending on what suits you. You talk about healing, but you often reopen wounds, especially with your family." Harry's expression darkened. "My family caused those wounds," he said quietly. "You have no idea what that's like." Jake's voice softened, but only slightly. "You're right. I don't. But when the public sees you criticize the very institution you came from while benefiting from it, well, they wonder if this is about healing or headlines." Harry's eyes flashed, and for the first time his polished composure cracked. "You think I wanted headlines? You think losing my mother to a chase fueled by the press taught me nothing?" His voice trembled slightly as he continued. "Everything I do now, everything, is to protect my wife and children from the same thing." The studio was silent. Even Jake hesitated before responding. "I believe you mean that," he said. "But you've also chosen a very public life in America. Cameras, interviews, books. You can't live in the spotlight and complain about the heat." That line landed hard. Harry sat back, shaking his head in disbelief. "That's not what this is about," he said tightly. "You twist it like the tabloids always do." Jake's tone remained calm. "I'm asking what everyone asks, Your Royal Highness. You say you left the royal family for privacy, yet you're still in the headlines more than ever." Harry's voice rose slightly. "Because the same media won't leave us alone." "You think we choose that attention?" Jake raised an eyebrow. "Do you not? Every appearance, every project, it seems designed to keep the world watching." Harry's patience snapped. "You know what, Jake?" he said, his voice low but shaking with anger. "You sit there behind your desk, judging, analyzing, twisting. You've never had to live with the kind of scrutiny that kills people." The words hung heavy in the air. Jake responded quietly. "You've used that tragedy to silence questions you don't like. I'm doing my job." That was it. Harry pulled off his microphone, the wire dangling as he stood up abruptly. "Then maybe your job should include some humanity," he said sharply. The control room went into panic mode as the prince turned toward the exit. "Prince Harry, please. We're live," one producer called out, but Harry didn't stop. The camera followed briefly, catching the back of his suit as he walked off set. Jake sighed heavily, turning back to the lens. "Well," he said with forced composure, "that concludes our interview with Prince Harry." The feed cut to a stunned anchor at the CNN desk, who scrambled to switch to a commercial. The internet, however, needed no commercial break. Within minutes, the clip of Harry walking out had gone viral. Social media exploded. Hashtags like Harry vs. Tapper, Chuck Royal Walk-Off, and Chuck CNN Meltdown dominated every platform. Opinions split the world in half. Some said Jake had disrespected the prince. Others argued Harry couldn't handle tough questions. Memes flooded Twitter. Screenshots of Harry's glare, Jake's composed smirk, captions like CNN meets Crown. Late-night shows replayed the moment endlessly. What was meant to be a serious conversation about truth had become a cultural spectacle. Later that night, sources close to Harry claimed he was deeply upset by the tone of the interview. One insider told the press he felt ambushed, not interviewed. Meanwhile, CNN issued a calm statement. "We stand by our journalism. Mr. Tapper conducted a fair and professional interview." Behind the scenes, however, executives were ecstatic. Ratings had skyrocketed. Jake, sipping coffee in his office, stared at his buzzing phone, unread messages piling in. He knew he'd just become part of the biggest media storm of the year. The next day, Harry broke his silence in a short social media post. "I walked off because sometimes silence speaks louder than debate." The post received millions of reactions, but the damage, or publicity, was already done. CNN replayed the clip for days while royal commentators dissected every frame. In the end, both men got exactly what they hadn't planned for. Jake got record-breaking ratings, and Harry, once again, found himself at the center of the very spotlight he claimed to escape. But somewhere behind closed doors, perhaps even he realized, in the modern world, truth and spectacle were no longer enemies. They had become. The next morning, the royal world was spinning faster than Buckingham Palace could keep up. Headlines stretched across every major outlet. Prince Harry storms out of CNN. Jake Tapper stands his ground. Another royal scandal on American soil. Inside Montecito, the Sussex home was quieter than usual. Meghan sat by the kitchen window, scrolling through her phone with a weary expression. "Harry," she said softly, "you're everywhere again." He rubbed his eyes, looking both angry and exhausted. "I just wanted an honest conversation," he muttered. "They turned it into a circus." Meghan sighed, setting her phone down. "You walked out on live television." Of course they did. Across the ocean in London, royal aides were already drafting statements. King Charles reportedly told his advisors, "We shall not respond." But behind closed doors there was disappointment. A senior palace source whispered to the press, "Every time Harry tries to speak his truth, it becomes a storm that touches us all." Meanwhile, British tabloids feasted on the drama, with headlines like "The Prince and the Anchor" and "From Palaces to Public Feuds." To them, it was a familiar script, but this time, Harry wasn't the rebellious teen or the grieving son. He was a man who had walked away from one world, only to collide with another. By afternoon, Meghan's publicist received a call from CNN's PR team. They wanted to clarify the misunderstanding. Meghan listened quietly as the rep tried to sound diplomatic. "We'd like to extend an invitation for a follow-up discussion, perhaps to give Prince Harry a chance to..." She cut in sharply. "He won't be coming back." Her tone was calm but cold. When you invite someone to talk about healing and turn it into interrogation, that's not journalism. That's exploitation. She ended the call and turned to Harry. "They'll spin this however they want. We just have to control what we can." Later that evening, Harry stood alone on the balcony, the California sunset painting the sky in gold and crimson. He could hear Archie's laughter in the distance, the faint hum of a normal life he'd fought so hard to build. But his thoughts were elsewhere, back in the studio, back in the glare of the cameras, back to Jake Tapper's calm, probing eyes. "Am I part of the system I hate?" he wondered aloud. For the first time, doubt slipped through the cracks of his conviction. The silence of the Pacific stretched before him, vast and unforgiving that night. A statement appeared on the Sussex Foundation's website. Prince Harry remains committed to open dialogue about truth, media, and mental health. However, he believes respect must be mutual, not performative. The post went viral instantly. Jake, scrolling through Twitter at midnight, read it quietly, exhaling through his nose. "Mutual respect," he whispered, almost to himself. If only that had existed in that studio. He turned off his phone, feeling the strange weight of victory that didn't feel like one.